Eagles, Steelers is one of the Super 6 matchups this week. Give us your winner and final score.
Oh, 27-20 Steelers. I think the number's right. That's why I didn't put it in my Blazing Five. I think short week. Eagles have to travel west back to east. Short week. You lose a day of prep, and the Steelers are off a kind of like a unscheduled bye. So Mike Tomlin's like 9-4 off buys. So I get a veteran coach, well-rested, healthier team off a bye. I take the Steelers by about a touchdown. Eric Mangini's got multiple rings, 3 Super Bowls while with the Patriots. Jets, Browns head coach. He is joining me now from Cleveland, by the way. I'll get to the Browns in a second. So, you know Tom well, and one of the things I worried about when he went to Tampa, it wasn't that his arm was shot. I didn't care about that. My question was, he had great protection in New England, and Tampa's O-line is average. The second thing is, Bruce Arians is loosey-goosey, and the culture of the organization's kind of been, Ybor City and fun, let's get cocktails early. And I'm like, that's not Tom. Tommy's got a system, and he's pretty rigid. And I'm watching last night, and I'm thinking, you're watching what I'm watching last night, right? Like an undisciplined mess. And I think Tom kind of got unglued on the sidelines, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my career, I was with Belichick, and then I went to Parcells, then I went back to Belichick. I had 1 year with Ted Marchibroda in between. Then I was a head coach, and then I go out to San Francisco, and I'm with Jim Harbaugh, and it's a very, very different approach, a very different system. I love him. And I, respect the things that he does, but it's very different than what I was used to. And one of the things that Tom, and I'm sure Gronk is getting used to, is that all those issues that were buttoned up in New England that you never had to worry about, whether it was penalties or being reminded about situational football or game management, any of those things that were so buttoned up, the discipline, it's not the same everywhere. And yeah, you may be having more fun in the off season, and you may be having more fun during the course of the week, but 11 penalties isn't fun, and losing the game because of self-inflicted wounds isn't fun. And Tom's learning about that, and it's a hard lesson sometimes to learn.
What about not shaking hands? That bother you?
No, I mean, we spent the whole day talking about Mahomes' embrace and what potentially could have happened and how he could have gotten COVID, and then Tom doesn't shake hands after the game. I mean, I assumed it was more related to that than it was some sort of slight. It's uncharacteristic for Tom to do that. I assumed it was COVID based.
All right. So Tyron Smith, left tackle, out. So the center already retired before the season, Travis Frederick. Tyron Smith is out, right tackle's out. I've always had kind of this theory in the NFL. There's certain units in season, if they go sideways, you're toast. You can't correct them in season. People aren't just giving up left tackles in this league because there's about 6 great ones. And I look at Dallas this morning, and I got to be honest, Eric, I look at them differently. The offensive line's not the same. I don't think you can correct a bad offensive line in weeks 7, 8, 9, 10. Your thoughts on what they're facing?
Yeah, the offensive line hasn't been the same all season long, and this is a terrible. And you saw last game they tried to help some of the guys that they brought in. They tried to chip with the tight end and chip with the running back, and you can do some of that stuff, but you're limited. You're limited in terms of how many times you want to go with an empty formation and only block 5 on 5. But they have Zeke. And if they'll commit to running the ball consistently, game in and game out, you've got a chance to help that offensive line the most. We talked about last week how it would help the defense, but running the ball helps the offensive line significantly. I remember in '97 we played Barry Sanders, and I'm not saying that Zeke is Barry Sanders, but we had a chance to go to the playoffs, and we did everything in the world to try to stop this guy, and he still broke a big play late in the game. And Zeke has that capability. He has the capability to break a big play at any point. It slows down the pass rush. It helps the defense. And it gives those guys who struggle in pass rush, a much better opportunity than they're going to have if you want to go out and sling it, 50 times a game.
So, you're a coach, you're Anthony Lynn, and you want to start Tyrod Taylor, then the medical guys mess up, and you feel some guilt, and then you put Justin Herbert out there, and he's like, oh, boy, this kid's slinging it all over the yard. I mean, it's a situation for Anthony Lynn. I don't think he wanted to be in it, but how could you go to the team and go back to Tyrod Taylor? I mean, players, you can't lie to players. Justin Herbert, to me, is, I mean, it looks like the Rose Bowl. I mean, he's controlling the offense. I mean, I'm surprised how good he is. Do you have any sympathy for what Anthony Lynn goes to? Didn't he have to make that move?
Yeah, that doctor's probably done hundreds and hundreds of injections, and it's sometimes one player's misfortune is a bunch of players' fortune, and it's a difficult thing because as a head coach, you want to be consistent and you want your guys to know that they're not going to lose their spot due to injury, and especially an injury that had nothing to do with anything that the player did. But the guys also want to know that you're really committed to playing the best players. And when you say you're doing what's in the best interest of the team to win the game, it has to be meaningful. And Herbert's come in, he's got over 100 quarterback rating. He's completed over 70% of his passes. He's looked better than I think anybody expected him to. So it's hard to then go sit in front of the team and say, I'm going to do everything I can to allow us to win the game, but I'm not going to play this guy because I want to be consistent as a head coach. Guys understand the business element of it.
Yeah, they do. So I watched that Monday night game, Brian Hoyer struggling and Jarrett Stidham, and I thought Cam Newton may have gotten himself a contract extension for not playing because you couldn't take away how inept they were. And Eric, I don't know if Cam is a rental. I think they're going to be too good to get a top 10 draft pick. They're not going to get one of these quarterbacks. Nobody in the AFC is going to give him a break and let him have somebody. And I'm like, I think Cam may end up being a solution for a while, maybe, right?
It's possible. New England hit the football lottery again. They hit it. We hit it with Tom Brady when we get him in the 6th round. And then you bring Cam Newton in for $500,000 guaranteed. He's better than anyone could have expected coming off the injury. He's able to do what he did with his feet in the first game and then throw the ball effectively the next game out. And to say that New England knew something that everybody else did, I don't think that's true. The contract itself tells you what they thought about Cam's potential. But he comes in and he's changed the trajectory of the season post Tom Brady. And everybody in New England, everybody in the league got to look at what it could be without Cam Newton. And if they had to live through, the growing pains of Stidham.
Yeah. So it's funny, when you were in New England, you got used to big wins. So if you win a big game on Sunday against the Baltimore, emotionally, that's the standard for New England. But Cleveland's different. When you were at the Jets, that's different. And you win a big game, and everybody pats you on the back, and Cleveland beats the Browns, or the Browns beat the Cowboys, excuse me. And everybody now is like, oh, my God, look at this team. Stefanski's brilliant. OBJ's amazing. And I said this morning as one of my picks. I said, I'm always leery of losing cultures that win their biggest TV game in years, and then the next week they actually play a much better team, the Colts this week, and the Colts aren't flashy and nobody's talking about it. So I like the Colts over the Browns. But in your life in this NFL, cultures are different, and teams that aren't used to winning win big games. Were you ever in Cleveland or the Jets, you won a big game, and you did every trick in the book, and they were still flat the next week?
Yeah, unfortunately, I got fired in New York because of that. And look, Teddy Atlas, the boxing trainer, always would say, success is like a martini. It relaxes you. And when I was in New York and we had Favre, when we were rolling, I think we were 7-2 and 8-2. And then we won, one out of our last 4 or 5 games. And it was, you could see it, you could feel it. The guys were doing a million interviews and all kinds of things on their day off. Guys were showing up late. There were mistakes that were made, at that point that hadn't been made before. And you're giving this constant speech of look, we're not as good as we think we are. And suddenly, reality sets in and it catches up with you. And it's hard. It's hard to teach guys how to deal with success because we spend so much of our time with athletes teaching them how to deal with adversity. But it can be just as difficult a thing to navigate through.
Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy your fall in Ohio.
I will. Enjoy your beautiful steak dinner tonight by the beach, and I don't resent you for it. But...
That's funny. Coach, it's good seeing you. Get out to California sometime.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Eric Mangini, one of the good guys. He goes and has steaks with me every time he comes into town. We sit and talk X's and O's. It's so boring to all of America except us. We sit and talk draft picks and left tackles, and he's the best guy to go to dinner with. It's just unbelievable how much you learn from him every time I go. Great stories, many of which you can't talk about on the air.
How do you get your steak?
I go medium rare with horseradish. Horseradish all over it.
Yeah, medium rare.
My daughter told me last night, she goes, Dad, that's your British background.
The horseradish?
She said, that feels like Great Britain. And I'm like, I don't know.
I like horseradish with oysters.
Oh, so do I. That's what I'm going to have tonight.
Oh, oysters are so good.
Oh, the best.
They're an acquired taste, though. Everybody doesn't like oysters.
I grew up next to a town called Oysterville.
Well, yeah, so I learned how to eat oysters later in life. I grew up in Pittsburgh, not a big oyster place.
You wouldn't want to eat the oysters from Pittsburgh. Joy with the news.
No.